"You're a burden, Dad. Get out." "Oh," shouted my greedy daughter, waving a winning lottery ticket worth $30 million. Her husband laughed as he kicked me out of the house I had bought with my own money. I just smiled. "Daughter, are you sure you read the name on that ticket?" When they looked closer, they started screaming and tearing their hair out. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The invoices landed on the coffee table like indictments. Teresa's palm smacked down next to them, causing the utility statements to skid toward my faded armchair. "Take a look at this disaster." Her tone sliced through the midday quiet. $300 for power, $250 for heating, and that's without factoring in food costs. Neil fidgeted on the sofa without diverting his gaze from the TV. Some chat program buzzed in the background. Crowd chuckles underscoring our household turmoil. The sarcasm didn't escape me. "Your measly 1-200 doesn't cover even the basics like food." Teresa whirled toward me, her cheeks red with fury. "We're sinking here, Dad, and you just lounge there as if all is well." I clasped my hands in my lap, observing her stride back and forth from the kitchen doorway to the coffee table. 3 years of this. 3 years since I'd handed them my all. "The retirement fund handles what it handles," I replied softly. "Perhaps one of you could at last secure employment." The statement lingered in the room like haze. Neil's gaze jerked toward me, his eyes squinting. The chat show presenter's words occupied the abrupt hush. "Are you implying I'm a loser?" Neil's tone held that perilous sharpness I'd come to identify. He heaved himself upright on the sofa, no longer reclining. "I've been searching for jobs. The economy's awful for sales executives for 2 years. The query escaped before I could halt it. Teresa chuckled harshly and resentfully. "Sure, Neil's the issue, not the reality that your benefits are scarcely sufficient to maintain the electricity." She pointed at the strewn invoices. "We require actual funds, not loose change from some mill retirement." The coffee table dividing us could have been a chasm. These invoices, these figures, they symbolized more than routine costs. They were proof of shattered vows, of efforts that had remained unappreciated. "I labored 37 years at that mill," is stated. My tone firm despite the rage swelling in my torso. "That retirement sustained your mom and me adequately." "Well, Mom's gone now, isn't she?" Teresa's remark struck like a blow. "And your modest retirement doesn't extend to support 3 individuals." Neil rose to his feet now, his size throwing a shadow over the coffee table. "Perhaps you should have considered that prior to settling in with us." His manner implied I'd imposed myself into their residence instead of being welcomed. The TV's canned laughter appeared to ridicule us all. "I recall being invited to settle in," I remarked cautiously after I sold my property and assisted with your initial payment. "That was another time." Teresa dismissed it with a flick of her hand. "That was 3 years back. Circumstances evolve." 3 years? Had it truly been that duration since I'd presented the payment for $150,000? Since Teresa had embraced me and vowed I'd forever have a place with them? "Circumstances do evolve," I concurred, "but I remain the same." Neil advanced nearer to my seat. "Listen, elderly guy, we're appreciative for what you provided then, but that doesn't entitle you to complimentary lodging and meals indefinitely." The phrase wounded more than anticipated. Complimentary lodging and meals. As if my retirement, my food contributions, my aid with bills amounted to zilch. "I'm not seeking complimentary anything," I stated. "I contribute my portion." "Your portion," Teresa's pitch rose. "Your portion would involve dividing everything equally among 3. Your portion would be $800 for housing, not the 0 you contribute currently." The calculation was intentionally harsh. $800 would leave me with $400 from my retirement. $400 to manage meals, attire, health needs, all that an elderly man required to endure. "So what are you proposing?" I inquired. Teresa and Neil shared a glance. In that look, I perceived something that froze me more than the November chill leaking through the panes. They'd talked about this previously. This wasn't an impromptu dispute arising from monetary pressure. This was orchestrated. "We're proposing," Neil articulated deliberately, "that you determine a way to add more or determine another place to reside." The TV crowd burst into cheers. Someone had just triumphed something, obtained something marvelous and unforeseen. The disparity seemed purposefully vicious. I gazed at my daughter, scanning her features for any remnant of the young child who used to scramble onto my lap during storms that frightened her. The lady gazing back at me was unfamiliar. "I understand," I said. But I didn't understand. Not yet. I wouldn't grasp fully for another few moments when Teresa would shove $5 wrinkled dollars into my palm and dispatch me into the chill. I wouldn't comprehend the complete extent of their ungratefulness until I strolled through the avenues of Elgin, recollecting every concession I'd made for them. At this point, I simply felt exhausted. Exhausted and naive for thinking that kinship signified something beyond a monthly cost ledger. "Well," Teresa insisted, "what's your decision?" The inquiry dangled between us like a blade. Outside, clouds amassed for what appeared to be the season's initial genuine freeze. Inside, something similarly acrid was enveloping our modest sitting area. The quiet extended like a suspended inhalation. Teresa loomed over me, hands on her waist, awaiting a response I lacked. Neil stayed by the sofa, arms folded, displaying the look of a man who'd already triumphed. At last, Teresa emitted a noise of revulsion. "All right, just all right." She marched toward the kitchen, then pivoted back. "But you're not lounging here all day pitying yourself." She vanished briefly, and I heard the recognizable noise of her bag being rummaged. Coins jingled, papers shuffled. When she reappeared, she clutched a rumpled $5 note in her grasp. "Here." She pushed the currency toward me as if it scorched her skin. "Take this $5 and purchase a lottery slip. At least then you'll contribute something to this household." The note dangled between us, creased and fatigued. "5, the value of my worth, evidently." "Proceed," she urged when I didn't promptly accept it. "Perhaps you'll strike it rich and resolve all our issues." Neil snickered from his spot by the sofa. "Yeah, because that's precisely how lottery slips function." But Teresa gave him a glare that muted his irony. This wasn't about the lottery slip, and we all recognized it. This was about dispatching me away, removing me from the residence so they could converse about whatever they'd been scheming. I extended my hand and accepted the $5. The paper felt pliable from use, thinned by innumerable exchanges. Someone else had acquired this currency, expended it, obtained it as change. Now it was mine, a present enveloped in shame. "Thank you," I said. Teresa blinked as if she'd anticipated a dispute. "Well, fine," she retreated, abruptly unsure. "The corner shop on Mellon offers those instant win tickets. Choose something worthwhile, not those cheap ones." I folded the note meticulously and tucked it into my shirt pocket. "I'll handle that." Rising from my seat demanded more exertion than it ought to have. My joints complained, rigid from enduring the dispute. How long had we been engaged in this? An hour, too? The midday glow filtering through the windows had altered, become fainter. "Where are you heading?" Neil questioned as I proceeded toward the entry closet to acquire a lottery ticket. I retrieved my jacket from its hook. The material felt weightier than normal. Or perhaps I felt lighter, emptied. "Isn't that what was demanded?" Teresa observed me fasten the jacket. "You don't have to portray it as if we're banishing you to jail." "Certainly not." I wrapped my scarf around my neck, proceeding slowly with each twist. "It's a lovely day for a stroll." Through the pane, I could observe the November heavens bearing down like a dull cover. Lovely wasn't the term anyone would apply, but then again, honesty appeared scarce in this residence. "Dad." Teresa Stone held a nuance I couldn't fully discern. Remorse, hesitation? "We're not. This isn't targeted." I halted with my hand on the door handle. "No, I'm certain it's not. It's merely pragmatic," Neil interjected from the sitting room. "We all must confront facts." "Facts?" Yes, I was starting to perceive facts quite distinctly. The facts of what my $150,000 had secured me. The facts of what kinship signified when finances grew scarce. "I comprehend," I said, and I did more than they realized. I opened the front entrance and November breeze surged in to welcome me. It bore the scent of decayed foliage and impending snow, of periods shifting regardless of our preparedness. "Get the 5 tickets," Teresa shouted after me. "Those offer superior chances." "Superior chances." I nearly grinned at that. After today, I was starting to believe I grasped chances better than ever before. "I'll keep that in mind," I said. The door shut behind me with a gentle snap, severing the heat and the voices from the TV that had scored my degradation. The veranda stairs groaned under my steps. And then I was on the pavement, inhaling fresh air for the first time in hours. $5 in my pocket. $5 to acquire optimism, to prove my value, to address all our dilemmas. They had no notion how accurate they might prove about that. But first I needed to stroll. I needed to reflect. I needed to recall precisely how I'd wound up on this pavement with $5 in my pocket and no place to deem home. The corner shop on Emlan was a 20-minute trek. I had time to recollect everything. Time to tally every concession, every violated pledge, every act of goodwill that had gone unrecognized. Time to resolve what to do regarding it. The chill struck my face like an awakening. November in Illinois didn't fool around, and today felt like winter's alert. I drew my jacket closer and began strolling, abandoning Teresa's residence behind me. My feet discovered their cadence on the pavement instinctively. Left, right, left, right. The identical tempo I'd marched to the Ford facility each morning for 37 years. The identical steady strides that had transported me through this area innumerable times since relocating with my daughter. Relocating, what an expression. As if I'd had an option. The homes on Teresa's Avenue appeared cozy and welcoming, golden illumination pouring from windows as households seized into their Friday night patterns. Through one pane, I caught sight of a dad aiding a young lad with schoolwork at a kitchen counter. Through another, a mom arranged dishes for supper while her adolescent daughter chatted on the phone. Ordinary households. Households that likely didn't compute the precise monetary worth of their senior kin. I veered onto Milan Street, passing the primary school where Teresa Hadant studied. The play structures appeared fresher now. More vibrant hues, safer forms, everything enhanced except familial devotion. Evidently, the $5 bill crumpled in my pocket as I proceeded. $5 for optimism, $5 for value. The sarcasm didn't evade me that this identical sum had once signified something completely different to me. When Teresa was 8 and craved frozen treats from the vendor, $5 had been a magnificent act. When she was 16 and required fuel funds, $5 had been liberty itself. Now it was alms. Worse than alms, it was a rejection. My exhalations emerged in tiny mists as the temperature plummeted. The climate mirrored my disposition. Overcast and growing frostier, but the strolling felt beneficial. It felt like advancement, even if I wasn't certain where I was advancing to. 3 blocks from Teresa's residence, I passed the intersection where old Mr. Henderson used to reside. He'd departed 2 years ago. His property sold to a youthful pair with twin infants. Henderson had dwelled solo after his spouse passed, just like I dwelled solo now despite being encircled by kin. The recollection struck me unexpectedly. 3 years prior, standing in the kitchen of my own residence on Elm Street, the residence I'd purchased in 1983, where I'd nurtured Teresa, where Margaret and I had intended to age together, the residence that had been cleared for 15 years when the illness claimed Margaret. "Dad, you can't reside in that large residence all alone," Teresa had declared. Her tone brimming with worry I'd trusted was authentic. "It's not secure. What if you stumble? What if an incident occurs?" Neil had assented, portraying the concerned in-law. "We've got that spare chamber. You'd be assisting us truly. Aid with the loan, aid with the loan." Even then it had concerned finances. "The property is valued at least $180, the agent had informed me. Possibly more in this economy. Site's ideal. Everything's been preserved, $180,000. 34 years of loan installments, upkeep, enhancements. 34 years of Margaret's yard, her meticulous adornments, her aspirations realized in wall coverings and hue selections. "We'll look after you well, Dad," Teresa had assured. "You'll always possess a residence with us, always." What a term. What a falsehood. The property had sold for $182,000. After charges and final expenses, I'd departed with $178,000. I'd retained $28,000 for myself, sufficient for crises, medical costs, perhaps a brief trip to view the Grand Canyon as Margaret had always desired. The remainder, $150,000, I'd bestowed to Teresa and Neil, their initial deposit on the residence where I now resided as an undesired visitor. "This is so kind, Dad." Teresa had wept, genuinely wept when I presented the payment. "We'll never overlook this, never." 3 years. It had required precisely 3 years for never to transform into, never mind. I arrived at Lord's Park and halted at the gateway. The lake was beginning to frost over with ice, and the geese that typically gathered here had largely departed for warmer areas. Wise creatures. They recognized when it was time to depart. $28,000, that's what remained of my life's labor. $28,000 and a $1,200 retirement. That evidently wasn't adequate to purchase me fundamental human respect for my own daughter. But it could suffice for something else, something they weren't anticipating. I extracted the $5 bill from my pocket and examined it in the waning light. Such a minor item to embody such a major affront, but occasionally minor items could yield major outcomes. The corner shop was 2 blocks distant. I could spot its glowing sign flickering afar, crimson and azure against the dull heavens. Open around the clock, always available when required. I folded the bill meticulously and returned it to my pocket. Then I resumed strolling. my strides more determined now. I had a lottery ticket to acquire. I had a tomorrow to safeguard, and I had some strategies to devise. The 7-Eleven's bright lights assaulted me like a beacon after the dull afternoon. The chime rang above as he shove it through the glass entrance, and abruptly, I was amid ordinary folks performing ordinary tasks. Ality balanced Java and vehicle keys while her young child pleaded for sweets. 2 adolescents argued over energy beverage options by the refrigerator. No one here was aware of family gatherings masked as money talks. No one here had just been instructed to seek another dwelling. Afternoon, Mr. Peters. Ramsch glanced up from behind the register, his grin sincere. He'd been employed here 2 years, perhaps 3. Always courteous, always recalled names. Chilly one today, growing chillier. I neared the register where the lottery exhibit stood like a temple to unattainable visions. Instant wins in orderly arrays. Powerball and Mega Millions slips awaiting printing. Powerball for this evening's draw. Tuesday's the major one. Ramsch amended politely. 30 million prize. You sensing fortunate? Fortunate? What a fascinating term. Was it fortune that had led me to this instant? Was it fortune that Teresa had given me $5 and dispatched me like a messenger? 1 slip for Teresa Hargrove, I declared distinctly. And 2 slips for Orrin Peters. Ramesh's digits danced over the device without inquiry. The printer churned out 3 pieces of paper with their tidy sequences of digits. Aspiration distilled to statistical likelihood. Random selection on all 3. Random selection. Allow the device pick. Allow fate determine what digits might alter everything. I withdrew my billfold, sensing the gravity of my choice. Teresa's wrinkled $5 bill landed on the register first. Then I supplemented a 10 from my own funds, fresh and pristine from the bank extraction I'd performed last week. Altogether, Ramesh stated, providing change. Best wishes to both of you. Both of us, if only he understood. The device completed printing with a robotic exhale. 3 slips, each displaying the draw date. Tuesday, November 19th, 2024, each bearing the identical improbable probabilities, the identical slender opportunity of converting everyday existences into something remarkable. I folded the slips meticulously, ensuring not to fold the codes. Teresa's slip entered my shirt pocket near my heart like a concealed vow. My 2 slips located spots in my billfold, tucked amid aged snapshots and my health card. Climate's expected to worsen this week, Ramesh remarked, tallying my change. Snow by Thursday, possibly Friday. Fortunate I lack any vital commitments. The falsehood flowed smoothly. I had the most vital commitment on Tuesday evening, right in that sitting room, observing Teresa verify those digits. Observing her expression when she grasped what $30 million signified. Observing her scheme a tomorrow that excluded the load of tending to an elderly dad. A tomorrow that would never arrive. The chime rang once more as I shoved back into the November frost. The afternoon had darkened further while I was indoors, street lamps starting to sparkle on even though dusk was still an hour distant. November in Illinois didn't favor extended days or mild shifts. $5 of Teresa's funds had acquired her 1 shot at 30 million. 10 of my funds had acquired me 2 shots at something far more precious, fairness. The trek home would require 20 minutes. 20 minutes to ready my expression. To rehearse the look of a man who'd followed orders precisely. 20 minutes to revert to the compliant dad again. The appreciative reliant who'd utilized his daughter's benevolence to purchase unattainable visions. I drew my jacket tighter and commenced strolling. Behind me, the 7-Eleven's glowing sign hummed in the increasing gloom, promoting optimism and quick brew and tobacco, all the items folks purchased when they needed something to transform their existences. I possessed what I required in my billfold now. Transformation was approaching whether they were prepared or not. The slips whispered gently against my chest as I proceeded. 3 fragments of paper that would redefine everything. 3 opportunities for the cosmos to provide precisely the fairness that 37 years of diligent labor and $150,000 in benevolence merited. Tuesday couldn't arrive swiftly enough. The front entrance gave way to my key with its usual reluctance. 3 years off twisting that lock, and it still seemed somewhat alien, like I was requesting entry to another's domain. The heat struck my face instantly, along with the noise of the TV and the aroma of whatever Teresa was preparing for supper. That you, Dad? Her tone drifted from the kitchen, nonchalant and offhand. Just me. I suspended my jacket in the closet, proceeding slowly with the timber hanger. The slips felt warm against my chest. 3 tiny rectangles of potential that no one else knew were there. Neil glanced up from the sofa when I stepped into the sitting room. He'd shifted spots since I departed, but scarcely. Now he was stretched across the pillows with a sack of snacks perched on his belly, viewing some midday chat program. Snag yourself a Victor. He motioned at me with the controller, his manner implying the query was more derision than true curiosity. I reached into my shirt pocket and extracted the 3 slips, setting them on the coffee table with rehearsed nonchalance. Just a standard deal, nothing meriting close scrutiny. Random picks, I said. Draws Tuesday. Teresa came out from the kitchen, cloth in her grasp, and looked at the coffee table. The slips rested there harmlessly, 3 bands of white paper amid the dispersed post and remotes, already scheming how to expend your fortunes. Her chuckle had pointed borders. Perhaps you can acquire us a fresh residence somewhere with superior warmth. The sarcasm was so flawless it ached. She had no clue how near to reality her mockery struck. Neil seized one of the slips, scarcely looking before hurling it back. Powerball, eh? What's the prize this week? 30 million? I said softly. 30 million. Teresa shook her head, advancing toward the pane to tweak the drapes. Just picture it. 30 million and all our troubles resolved. No more quarrels over food funds. No more concern about warmth costs. She drew the drape closed against the premature gloom. Naturally, with our fortune, we'll match 1 digit and score free slips for next week. That's about correct, Neil concurred, redirecting his focus to the TV. Peter's family fortune runs about as sparse as everything else here. I stood there hearing them talk about my slips, our slips, with the relaxed assurance of folks who'd never encountered genuine fortune, positive or negative. They viewed 3 fragments of paper valued at $15 of transient optimism. They couldn't perceive the meticulous scheming, the tactical reasoning, the equity poised to reveal. Well, Teresa said, easing into her seat, I guess it's pleasant to fantasize for a couple days even if it's mere illusion. Illusion? The term lingered in the air like fragrance in a sanctuary. They had no notion that their illusion was about to turn into another's actuality. I think I'll relax before supper, I said. Sure enough. Teresa fluttered the cloth distractedly. We're having remaining stew. Hope that's fine with you. Of course it was fine with me. Everything was fine with me now. I was the appreciative reliant, the elderly dad who took whatever bits of regard came his way. The man who'd sold his residence and surrendered his tomorrow for the honor of being endured in another's home. I ascended the stairs gradually, allowing my feet to locate each step with intentional caution. Behind me, the TV hummed on, and Neil offered some remark about supper that drew a pointed reply from Teresa. Typical household noises, typical household frictions, everything utterly typical for the final few days before typical concluded eternally. My camber awaited at the stair top, compact and orderly and provisional. The mattress I'd acquired with my own funds, the cabinet that had once resided in the primary bedroom of my residence on Elm Street, fragments of my former existence organized in area scarcely ample to hold them. I sat on the bed's edge and opened my billfold, examining the 2 slips nestled amid my health card and a snapshot of Margaret. Identical digits, identical date, identical unattainable probabilities as the one below, but these were mine. These bore my name in dark letters that couldn't be contested or rationalized away. Tuesday evening, 4 additional days of portraying the appreciative dad, Theload who added his retirement and purchased lottery slips with spare change. 4 additional days of hearing them scheme a tomorrow that presumed I'd always be present to assist fund it. 4 additional days until they discovered precisely what Orrin Peters was valued at. I returned the slips to my billfold and sealed it meticulously. Downstairs, something rattled in the kitchen, and Teresa shouted directives about arranging the table. Household noises, kinship noises, the accompaniment of folks who had no clue their realm was about to shift. From my pane, I could spot the 7-Eleven sign afar, a tiny luminous point in the accumulating darkness. Romesh would be commencing his night duty soon, verifying stock and assisting patrons purchase optimism for loose change. Optimism. That's what I'd acquired today, but not the type they imagined. I'd acquired the optimism of equity, the optimism of repercussions, the optimism that concession and goodwill might ultimately be compensated. Tuesday couldn't arrive swiftly enough. 4 days elapsed like liquid through grasped palms. Saturday and Sunday merged into Monday, routine household patterns interrupted by routine household frictions. The slips stayed on the coffee table, overlooked amid invoices and periodicals and Neil's vacant ale containers. I preserved my serene behavior, perusing dailies and viewing midday quiz programs. Sometimes Teresa would reference the slips casually, typically to crack some jest about our certain defeat. Neil disregarded them completely, more concentrated on employment forms he never fully completed. Tuesday night came overcast and frosty, winter embedding its essence into Illinois ground. The lottery program started at 8, wedged between bulletins and comedy repeats. We assembled in the sitting room without debate, attracted by custom rather than optimism. "Might as well verify our failure slips," Teresa said, extending for the coffee table. She collected all 3 slips, grasping them like a defeated set of cards. "What were those digits again, Dad?" "I don't recall." The deception flowed smoothly. I'd committed every numeral to memory 3 days prior. Knew them better than my own contact number. That's what the slips are for. The TV presenter materialized vibrant and eager, encircled by numbered orbs in a transparent plastic globe. "Good evening and welcome to Tuesday Night Powerball. Tonight's prize stands at $30 million. $30 million. Neil sat up a bit on the sofa, his interest snared despite his efforts. $30 million buys a lot of ale," he grumbled, attempting to appear unconcerned. Teresa hushed him, narrowing her eyes at the initial slip in her grasp. "Okay, let's go. Our opportunity to enter the circle of the freshly wealthy and arrogant." The globe rotated, orbs leaping like thrilled kids. The presenter extended in with rehearsed flair, extracting the first white orb. 7. Teresa checked the slip. 7? Well, that's one. "Don't get thrilled yet," Neil said. "It's likely the sole one." The second orb surfaced from the turmoil. 23. 23. Teresa's tone held a trace of curiosity. "Now we've got 23 as well." I sat in my seat, hands clasped, observing this spectacle with the aloofness of someone watching a performance. The performers didn't know their dialogue, didn't comprehend their parts in the unfolding drama. 31, Teresa leaned ahead. 31, that's 3. Her tone escalated. "Hold on, that's really 3 digits. Neil diverted from the TV, abruptly attentive. "Let me view that slip." 42. 42. Teresa was on her feet now, slip trembling in her grasp. 4 digits. "We have 4 digits." The presenter's voice appeared to reverberate in the abrupt strain. 58. Quiet. Teresa gazed at the slip, her mouth forming as she verified and re-verified. Neil clutched her arm, drawing the slip nearer to his gaze. 58, she murmured. "We have 58. 5 digits, Neil exhaled. 5 out of 6 digits. And now the presenter declared with rehearsed suspense. The Powerball. Tonight's Powerball digit is 12. The instant extended like a paused breath. Teresa examined the slip, examined the TV, examined back at the slip. Her features turned utterly pale. 12, she said, her tone scarcely heard. The Powerball is 12. Neil grabbed the slip from her grasp. His eyes scanned the digits like a man perusing his own doom verdict, then abruptly flared with frenzied thrill. "Oh my, we triumphed. We triumphed." He leaped from the sofa, the slip gripped in his hand. 30 million? We're wealthy. Teresa sank back into her seat, then promptly sprang up again as if the seat couldn't hold her thrill. "I can't fathom it. I truly can't fathom it. We won the lottery." They faced each other, hugging with a fervor I hadn't witnessed since their marriage. Neil twirled Teresa around the coffee table while she giggled and sobbed at once. 30 million, she repeated endlessly. 30 million? We can cease fretting about funds eternally, Neil said, his tone heavy with feeling. Fresh residence, fresh vehicles, journey anywhere we desire. We can settle all debts. We can acquire everything. We can achieve anything. I observed their festivity with the subdued curiosity of an explorer studying an alien society. Their delight was authentic, their exhilaration sincere. They genuinely thought their existences had just shifted from hardship to bliss. Can you picture it? Teresa turned to involve me in their festivity, her features red with elation. Dad, can you even picture 30 million? I nodded slowly. It's quite a sum. Quite a sum. Neil laughed, a sound approaching hysteria. It's life-changing money. It's never worry about anything again money. They danced around the coffee table like children, making plans and promises to each other. Teresa talked about the house in Florida she'd always dreamed of. Neil mentioned the boat he'd wanted since high school. Neither of them looked closely at the other 2 tickets still lying on the coffee table. Neither of them wondered why I seemed so calm in the face of their incredible fortune. They were too busy celebrating to notice that the man who'd made it all possible was watching them, with the patience of someone who knew the real show hadn't started yet. Their celebration reached fever pitch. Teresa grabbed Neil's hands and spun him around the coffee table again, both of them laughing like children who discovered buried treasure. The winning ticket fluttered in her grip like a white flag of victory. We're rich. We're actually rich. Neil lifted her off her feet, spinning her until she shrieked with delight. 30 million. Can you believe it? I remained in my chair watching their dance of triumph. They moved around me like I was furniture, already forgotten in their euphoria. The television continued its post-L programming, but neither of them paid attention anymore. They had what they needed. We can finally get that house in Florida, Teresa gasped when Neil sat her down. The one with the pool and the ocean view, remember? We looked at it online last year. And the boat, Neil added, his eyes bright with avarice. That 30-foot cabin cruiser. We'll live like kings? Teresa clutched the ticket to her chest like a love letter. No more worrying about money. No more arguing about bills. No more. Her gaze fell on me and something shifted in her expression. The wild joy remained, but underneath it I saw calculation, cold, practical assessment of what this windfall meant for their current arrangement. No more depending on anyone, she finished quietly. Neil followed her stare. For a moment the living room fell silent except for the television's drone. Then his face broke into a cruel smile. That's right. He straightened his shoulders, suddenly standing taller. We don't need your pathetic pennies anymore, old man. The words hit like physical blows. Pathetic pennies. 3 years of my pension, 3 years of grocery contributions, 3 years of helping them survive, reduced to pathetic pennies by a man who hadn't worked in 2 years. Those pennies fed you, I said quietly. Teresa's eyes flashed. Fed us? Your more $200 barely covered utilities. We've been carrying you for 3 years, Dad. 3 years of extra food, extra heating costs, extra everything because you couldn't take care of yourself. I sold my house for you. You sold your house because you couldn't maintain it, Neil snapped. Because you needed us to take care of you. Well, guess what? We don't need to take care of anyone anymore. Teresa waved the ticket like a scepter. We're millionaires now. We can afford to live our own lives without supporting dead weight. Dead weight. After 37 years of the Ford plant, after raising her alone when Margaret died, after giving them the majority of my life savings, I'd become dead weight. Pack your bags, Neil continued, his voice gaining confidence with each word. It's time you found somewhere else to live. Neil. Teresa's protest was weak, barely audible. No, Teresa, he heard what we said earlier. We can't afford to keep him here on his pension. Well, now we can afford not to keep him here. Neil crossed his arms, looking pleased with his logic. 30 million means we get to choose who lives in our house. Our house? The house they'd bought with my $150,000 had become their house the moment they thought they'd won the lottery. You want me to leave tonight? I asked. Tonight, tomorrow morning? Whatever, Neil shrugged. Point is, you need to go. We've got a new life to plan, and frankly, it doesn't include babysitting the elderly relatives. Teresa clutched her ticket tighter. Dad, you have to understand this changes everything. We can afford to help you find a nice assisted living place somewhere with people your own age. Assisted living, the final insult wrapped in false kindness. They wanted to warehouse me with other discarded family members, other inconvenient elderly relatives whose children had found better uses for their money. I understand perfectly, I said, rising from my chair. The simple action seemed to surprise them. Maybe they'd expected tears, begging, promises to be less of a burden. Instead, I stood with the same dignity I'd carried for 68 years. The same quiet strength that had supported them through every crisis they'd faced. You understand? Teresa blinked, momentarily uncertain. I understand that 30 million has shown me exactly who you really are. Neil's face reened. Don't try to guilt-trip us, Oldman. We don't owe you anything. No, I agreed. You don't. I walked toward the stairs, each step measured and deliberate. Behind me I heard Teresa whisper something to Neil, but I couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. Everything I needed to know had already been said. At the bottom of the staircase I paused and looked back. They stood together in their living room, surrounded by scattered bills and lottery dreams, holding their ticket like a weapon they just used to cut me out of their lives. They had no idea that the weapon belonged to me. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step carrying me away from their celebration and toward the small room that had sheltered me for 3 years. Behind me. Their voices rose again in excitement, planning purchases and vacations they'd never take. My bedroom waited in darkness. I flicked on the overhead light, and the space revealed itself in all its modest simplicity. A single bed with the quilt Margaret had made 20 years ago, A dresser that had once stood in our master bedroom on Elm Street, a small television that barely received local stations. This room had housed a man worth $30 million, and they'd treated him like charity case. I pulled my old suitcase from the closet, the same leather case I'd carried on my honeymoon with Margaret 43 years ago. The zipper still worked, though the corners showed wear from decades of modest travel. Bus trips to visit relatives, weekend getaways to Lake Geneva when money allowed. Packing took on a rhythm of its own. Shirts folded carefully, pants arranged to minimize wrinkles, 3 days' worth of underwear and socks, my diabetes medication, blood pressure pills, the little plastic organizer that helped me remember which pills to take when. The photograph of Margaret went into the suitcase first, wrapped in a spare undershirt for protection. 41 years of marriage reduced to a 4:6 frame, but it contained more love than this entire house had shown me in 3 years. My important documents filled a manila envelope. Social Security card, Medicare information, bank statements showing my modest balance, $28,000. Not enough to live comfortably in retirement, but enough for what I needed to do next. From downstairs came the sound of cabinet doors slamming, followed by Teresa's voice. Where did we put that bottle of champagne from last Christmas? They were celebrating. Of course they were celebrating. They thought they'd won their freedom along with their fortune. I sat on the edge of the bed holding my wallet. Inside, tucked between my driver's license and Medicare card, 2 lottery tickets waited patiently. Same numbers as the one they clutched downstairs. Same drawing date. Same $30 million jackpot, but different names. 42 years I'd worked in that factory, breathing metal dust and machine oil, watching younger men get promoted while I stayed steady and reliable on the floor. 42 years of overtime when we needed money for Teresa's school clothes, for Margaret's medical bills, for the 1,000 small expenses that come with raising a family properly. I'd never missed a day unless I was genuinely sick. Never called in because I wanted to go fishing or had a hangover or simply didn't feel like working. When the foreman needed someone for Saturday overtime, Orrin Peters raised his hand. When they needed someone to train new workers, Orrin Peters stayed late without extra pay. Steady, reliable, forgettable. The house on Elm Street had been my reward for all those years. Paid off early through careful budgeting and sacrifice. It had represented security for Margaret and me. When she died, it had been my sanctuary, filled with memories and familiar corners where her presence still lingered. I'd given it up for family, for blood, for the promise that I'd always have a home with people who loved me. Downstairs, Neil's voice boomed. First thing tomorrow, we call a travel agent. I want to see Paris, Rome, all those places we never thought we'd afford. Places they'd visit with my money while I sat in some sterile assisted living facility, paying forcible television and cafeteria meals with what remained of my Social Security. I closed the suitcase and zipped it shut. The sound was final, decisive. The life of grateful, dependent Orrin Peters was ending. What came next would be entirely different. A second, smaller bag held my toiletries and a change of clothes. Everything else, the furniture I'd bought, the lamp that had been Margaret's favorite, the books I'd accumulated over 3 years of empty evenings, could stay. Material things meant nothing now. Justice meant everything. The stairs creaked again as I descended, carrying my 2 small bags. The celebration in the living room had grown louder, more raucous. Someone had found that champagne. I reached the front hallway and set my bags by the door. The same door I'd walked through 3 years ago, carrying hope and gratitude for my daughter's kindness. Tonight I'd walk through it carrying something else entirely, the truth. Teresa stood in the hallway when I reached the bottom of the stairs, champagne glass in one hand, the lottery ticket in the other. She'd been waiting for me, probably to ensure I actually left. Her face was flushed with excitement and alcohol, her smile sharp with victory. Huh? Well, Dad, she said, waving the ticket like a conductor's baton. I guess this is goodbye. Don't look so sad. This is good for all of us. You'll be much happier somewhere more appropriate for your age. She held the ticket higher, admiring it against the hallway light. Our golden ticket to freedom. 30 million of pure, beautiful freedom. I set my bags down carefully and studied her face. In all the excitement, all the celebration and cruel dismissal, she hadn't actually looked at what she was holding. She'd checked the numbers against the television, celebrated the match, but never examined the ticket itself. Daughter, I said quietly, did you even read whose name is written on that lottery ticket? Her smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? It's our ticket. We bought it with our money. You bought it with $5. But whose name did you tell the machine to print? Something flickered in her eyes, confusion, then the first hint of unease. She lowered the ticket and looked at it closely for the first time since the drawing. Her face went completely white. Orrin Peters, she read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. This says Orrin Peters. That's right. She stared at the ticket, then at me, then back at the ticket. This can't be right. There must be some mistake. No mistake. That ticket belongs to me. But I gave you $5. You bought this for us. You gave me $5 to buy a ticket. I bought 3 tickets. 1 for you with your money in your name. 2 for me with my money in my name. I held out my hand. That ticket you're holding, that belongs to me. Neil appeared in the hallway, drawn by the change in Teresa's voice. What's going on? Why do you look like someone died? Teresa held up the ticket with trembling fingers. Neil, look at this. Look at the name. He squinted at the small print, his champagne-adulterated brain struggling to process what he was seeing. Orrin Peters, so what? The old man bought it for us. No, I said calmly. I bought it for me with my money in my name, which makes it legally mine. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of their television in the background, still playing to an empty living room. I watched understanding dawn on their faces like a sunrise in reverse, darkness spreading where light had been. You can't, Teresa's voice cracked. This is ours. We won this. We've been celebrating. You've been celebrating a ticket that was never yours. Neil stepped forward, his face wreathing. You bought that ticket with money we gave you. I bought 3 tickets. Yours is probably still on the coffee table where I left it with your name on it. And you're losing numbers. This is some kind of trick, Teresa whispered. But her voice carried no conviction. I reached out gently and took the ticket from her suddenly limp fingers. She didn't resist. The paper felt warm from her grip, slightly damp from her champagne-soaked celebration. $30 million, he said, looking at the numbers that matched perfectly with Tuesday night's drawing. That's quite a sum, as you said. Enough to buy a nice house somewhere warm. Enough to travel. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Dad, wait. Teresa's voice was pleading now, desperate. We can work this out. We're family. We can share it. Share it. I folded the ticket carefully and placed it in my wallet next to the 2 identical tickets that would serve as backup copies. The way we've shared this house, the way we've shared expenses, the way you just shared your feelings about supporting dead weight. Neil's face had gone from red to purple. You planned this. You set us up. I bought lottery tickets with my own money, just like millions of other people do every week. The fact that I won is just I smiled, feeling genuine happiness for the first time in 3 years. Lucky. Neil's footsteps thundered down the stairs like an avalanche. He peered in the hallway, his face purple with rage, champagne breath preceding him like a warning. What the hell is going on? He looked between Teresa's shocked face and my calm demeanor. Why does she look like someone died? Teresa held up her trembling hand, pointing at the ticket in my possession. Neil, the ticket. It has his name on it, not ours, his. For a moment, Neil's alcohol-fogged brain struggled to process the information. Then his eyes focused on the lottery ticket in my hands with laser intensity. Give that back right now. He stepped toward me, his bulk filling the narrow hallway. That ticket belongs to us. We've been planning our whole future around it. The ticket belongs to whoever's name appears on it, I said calmly. Illinois law is quite clear about that. I don't care what the law says. Neil's voice climbed toward hysteria. You bought that with our money in our house for our family. I bought 3 tickets. Yours is still on the coffee table with your losing numbers. Neil's hands clenched into fists. Give back that ticket, old man, or you'll regret it. I took a half step backward, maintaining eye contact. 1 more step toward me and I'm calling police for assault and attempted theft. The words stopped him like a physical barrier. His fists remained clenched, but his feet stayed planted. Even through his rage, he understood the implications. You can't do this to us, Teresa whispered, tears starting to flow. We're family. We've taken care of you for 3 years. Taking care of me? I tucked the ticket securely into my wallet. You just finished telling me I was dead weight you couldn't wait to get rid of. We didn't mean it, she pleaded. We were just excited about the money. We weren't thinking clearly. No, daughter. For the first time in 3 years, you were thinking very clearly. You showed me exactly what I mean to you when you thought you had the power to discard me. Neil stepped sideways, trying to block my path to the door. You're not leaving with that ticket. We'll call the police ourselves. We'll tell them you stole it. Please do. I reached for my suitcase handle. I'd be happy to show them my receipt from the 7-Eleven along with the security footage. of me purchasing 3 tickets with my own money. I'd also enjoy explaining how you tried to physically intimidate a senior citizen into surrendering his legal property. The color drained from Neil's face. Even drunk, he could follow that logic to its inevitable conclusion. Dad, please. Teresa's voice broke completely. We can work this out. We can share the money. You can live here as long as you want. We'll never mention money again, share. I lifted my second suitcase. The way we shared this house. The way we shared expenses. The way you shared your honest feelings about supporting your aging father. We made a mistake, Neil said, his aggression crumbling into desperation. People say things they don't mean when they're excited. No, Neil. People say what they really think when they feel safe enough to say it. Tonight you both felt safe enough to show me your true selves. I moved toward the door, and this time Neil stepped aside. His fight had collapsed into hollow defeat. Where will you go? Teresa asked quietly. Somewhere I'm wanted. I opened the front door, letting November air rush in around us. Somewhere I'm valued for more than my monthly pension check. You're making a huge mistake, Neil said. But his voice carried no conviction. No. I made my mistake 3 years ago when I believed family meant something more than financial convenience. I stepped onto the porch, my suitcases in hand. Tonight I'm correcting that mistake. The porch light cast long shadows across the front yard. Behind me I heard Teresa sobbing and Neil muttering curses under his breath. Ahead of me lay the cold November night and whatever future 30 million could buy. I walked down the driveway without looking back. Their voices faded behind me, swallowed by the darkness that had always felt more welcoming than their false warmth. For the first time in 3 years, I was free. The Motel 6 on Randall Road became my sanctuary that first night. The room smelled of industrial cleaning products and worn carpet, but it offered something Teresa's house never had: honest hospitality paid for with honest money. I sat on the edge of the bed holding the winning ticket under the harsh fluorescent light. 723, 31, 42, 58, Powerball 12. Numbers that would transform my remaining years from burden to blessing. Morning brought practical decisions. The Illinois lottery office in Des Plaines opened at 9 war. By 8:30, I was dressed in my best shirt and jacket, tickets secured in my wallet alongside backup documentation. The lottery building hummed with quiet efficiency. Security guards, government employees, people who process dreams for a living. My caseworker, Patricia, treated me with professional courtesy that felt revolutionary after 3 years of familial condescension. Congratulations, Mr. Peters. She examined my ticket under special lighting, checking watermarks and security features. Everything appears authentic. We'll need to verify your identity and discuss payment options. How long does the process take? 2 to 3 weeks for full processing. You'll have options. Lump sum after taxes, roughly 18 million, or annual payments over 30 years. 18 million. More money than 3 generations of Peter's men had earned combined. Lump sum, I said without hesitation. Smart choice for someone your age. We'll also discuss anonymity options. Illinois allows winners to remain private if they prefer. Private? Yes, I preferred that very much. My phone buzzed constantly those first days. Teresa's number appeared dozens of times, followed by Neil's. I let every call go to voicemail, eventually blocking both numbers entirely. The messages grew increasingly desperate. Teresa's apologies mixed with guilt, manipulation. Neil's threats transformed into pleading. By the second week, they'd recruited neighbors to call on their behalf. People who had no idea what had really happened. That Tuesday night, I changed my number. The motel became my temporary kingdom. Room 127, with its 2 double beds and cable television, cost $69 per night. For the first time in years, I could afford anything I wanted. But I chose simplicity. Fast food meals, basicable. Long walks around Elgin while I planned my future. December arrived with the first real snow. Through my window, I watched other travelers come and go. Salespeople, construction workers, families in transition, people living temporary lives while seeking permanent solutions. Like me. The lottery called on December 10th. Mr. Peters, your funds are ready for transfer. If you could come in tomorrow to finalize paperwork. Of course. That night I researched houses online. Lake Forest caught my attention immediately. Quiet neighborhoods near Lake Michigan, upscale but not ostentatious places where a retired lottery winner could live comfortably without attracting unwanted attention. Patricia handed me the final check on Thursday. December 12th, $18,200,000 after taxes. Enough to buy security, comfort, and most importantly, independence. Any plans for the money? She asked politely. Living well, I replied. Finally living well. The check went into my new bank account that afternoon. The banker, Mr. Morrison, treated me with the difference reserved for significant depositors. No questions about my previous circumstances. No judgments about my modest appearance, just professional service for a valued customer. Real estate appointments filled the following week. Lake Forest offered elegant options within my budget, not mansions, but substantial homes with character and privacy, places where Orrin Peters could be whoever he chose to be. I found my house on December 18th, a villa-style home with lake views, mature landscaping, and enough space for a man to think clearly. The seller accepted my cash offer immediately. Closing was scheduled for January 3rd. New Year's Eve found me in the same motel room watching celebrations on television while snow fell outside. Other people celebrated another year survived. I celebrated the beginning of my real life. At 68 years old, I was finally ready to live for myself. January sunshine streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new living room, casting warm light across hardwood floors that belonged entirely to me. The moving truck had departed 2 hours ago, leaving behind furniture chosen for comfort rather than economy, arranged in rooms spacious enough for a man to breathe freely. Lake Forest suited me perfectly. My neighbors nodded politely during morning walks, respecting the privacy that wealth could purchase. No one here knew about pension checks or family obligations or lottery tickets that had changed everything. Here I was, simply Mr. Peters, the quiet gentleman in the villa with the lake view. The kitchen gleamed with appliances I'd only seen in showrooms. This morning I'd prepared fresh coffee in a machine that cost more than a month of my previous grocery budget. The irony wasn't lost on me. I finally had money to eat well, and my appetite had returned for the first time in years. My phone sat silent on the granite countertop. 3 months since I'd changed my number, and the blessed quiet continued. No desperate voicemails, no guilt-laden text messages, no family emergencies that required my immediate financial intervention. Peace had a sound, and it was silence. Mrs. Henderson from next door had stopped by yesterday with homemade cookies, welcoming me to the neighborhood with genuine warmth. Her husband owned the medical practice downtown, she'd mentioned, and they'd lived here 23 years. Good people, she'd said, referring to our shared neighbors, people who valued privacy and respected boundaries. Respect. What a concept. The master bedroom overlooked Lake Michigan, where winter ice stretched toward the horizon like a promise of endless possibility. Margaret's photograph sat in the nightstand, and for the first time since her death I could look at her picture without feeling guilty about my circumstances. She would have loved this house, this view, this freedom to choose how we spent our days. Finally living for myself, I said aloud, testing the words in the empty room. They sounded true. My financial advisor had outlined investment strategies that would preserve wealth for decades. Conservative growth, diversified portfolio, enough income to maintain this lifestyle indefinitely. At 68, I had time to enjoy what I'd earned through 47 years of labor and 3 years of humiliation. Travel brochures covered the dining room table, Europe in spring, maybe Australia in their fall. Places Margaret and I had dreamed about during those Ford plant years. When overtime pay meant choosing between vacation savings and Teresa's school expenses. Now I could go anywhere, do anything, Beanie One. The doorbell rang, interrupting my planning. Through the security monitor, I saw a delivery truck and uniformed driver holding a large package. Mr. Peters' furniture delivery from Restoration Hardware. The dining room chairs I'd ordered last week. Handcrafted pieces that would last decades, unlike the second-hand furniture that had filled my previous life. Just set them in the foyer, I said, signing for the delivery. I'll arrange them later. The driver smiled professionally. Beautiful house, sir. You picked a great neighborhood. Yes, I agreed. I did. After he left, I walked through my new home again, noting details that still amaze me. Crown molding, hardwood floors, windows that opened to let in lake breezes, rooms large enough for entertaining, though I had no intention of hosting anyone from my previous life. This house represented more than wealth. It represented choice, the choice to live with dignity, to spend money without justification, to plan a future without considering anyone else's needs or opinions. Justice had taken an unexpected form. Not revenge exactly, but natural consequences. Their greed had cost them everything they'd thought they'd gained. My dignity had earned me everything they'd thought was theirs. The afternoon light shifted across my living room, painting geometric patterns on walls that would never echo with complaints about my pension or criticism of my contributions. These walls would know only peace. I settled into my new leather chair, opened the European travel guide, and began planning my spring in Tuscany. At 68, I was finally beginning to live. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.